The air in courtroom 7 crackled, not with the usual tension of a pending verdict, but with the electric audacity of the impossible. 19-year-old Elijah Vance, a legal prodigy barely old enough to order a celebratory drink, stood before the formidable Judge Eleanor Albright, a 60-year-old titan of the bench whose rulings had shaped the city's legal landscape for decades. His voice, though youthful, resonated with a steely resolve that belied his age. "Your Honor," he began, his gaze unwavering, "I am compelled to file a lawsuit against you for gross misconduct, judicial corruption, and obstruction of justice in the case of Sarah Johnson versus Emily Carter." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, a symphony of disbelief and shock. The gavel, usually wielded by Judge Albright with an air of unshakable authority, lay still on the bench, as if even it was stunned into silence. This wasn't just a legal challenge. It was a David and Goliath battle with a twist. The giant wore a robe, and the slingshot was wielded by a teenager with a mind sharper than any legal precedent. Elijah Vance wasn't your typical 19-year-old. While his peers navigated college applications and late-night parties, Elijah had already graduated top of his class from Harvard Law School at the unprecedented age of 16. He'd spent the last 3 years honing his skills at a small but fiercely dedicated pro bono law firm. His youthful appearance often met with skepticism that quickly dissolved upon witnessing his formidable intellect and unwavering dedication to justice. He possessed an almost preternatural ability to dissect complex legal arguments, identify inconsistencies, and build airtight cases. His passion wasn't for the prestige of the law, but for its power to right wrongs, especially for those whose voices were often silenced. The case that had brought Elijah to this audacious confrontation was a particularly egregious one. Sarah Johnson, a hardworking black woman, had been subjected to a torrent of racial abuse by her neighbor Emily Carter, a wealthy white woman with a history of similar complaints against other minority residents. The incidents ranged from blatant slurs and offensive gestures to acts of petty vandalism targeting Sarah's property. Sarah, finally pushed to her breaking point, had filed a lawsuit seeking damages and a restraining order. The case landed in Judge Eleanor Albright's courtroom, a venue known for its stern efficiency but also whispered about for its subtle biases, particularly in cases involving race. Judge Albright, a respected figure in legal circles, had cultivated an image of impartiality over her long career. However, beneath the veneer of objectivity, a subtle pattern of favoring certain demographics had begun to emerge, noticed by sharp legal minds like Elijah. From the outset of Sarah's case, Elijah, representing her pro bono, felt a chilling undercurrent of injustice. Judge Albright seemed dismissive of Sarah's testimony, often interrupting her and showing visible impatience. Conversely, she appeared sympathetic to Emily Carter, allowing her lawyer considerable leeway and even interjecting with questions that seemed to guide Carter's defense. Crucial evidence, including recorded instances of Carter's racist remarks and corroborating testimonies from other neighbors, were either downplayed or outright dismissed by the judge. Elijah meticulously documented every instance of what he perceived as judicial bias. He noted the subtle shifts in Judge Albright's body language, the tone of her voice when addressing the two parties, and the seemingly arbitrary rulings that consistently favored the white defendant. He spent countless nights poring over transcripts, comparing this case to others Judge Albright had presided over, and a disturbing pattern began to solidify. It wasn't just bias. It seemed like a deliberate effort to ensure a favorable outcome for Emily Carter. The final straw came during a hearing on a motion filed by Carter's lawyer to dismiss the case. Judge Albright, with barely a moment's consideration, granted the motion, citing insufficient evidence, despite the substantial documentation Elijah had presented. The ruling felt like a slap in the face, not just to Sarah, but to the very principles of justice Elijah held so dear. That night, fueled by righteous anger and a burning sense of injustice, Elijah made a decision that would send shockwaves through the legal community. He would sue Judge Eleanor Albright. The logistics of suing a sitting judge were daunting, to say the least. The legal system was designed to protect its own, and challenging a figure as powerful and established as Judge Albright was akin to tilting at windmills. Many of Elijah's colleagues, even those who shared his concerns about the case, urged him to reconsider, warning him of the potential repercussions for his career. But Elijah was undeterred. He believed that the integrity of the justice system was paramount, and if a judge could act with impunity, especially in a case involving racial discrimination, then the very foundation of that system was at risk. He spent weeks researching the rarely invoked legal avenues for challenging judicial misconduct, poring over ethics codes and constitutional law. He assembled a small but fiercely loyal team, including a seasoned paralegal known for her meticulous attention to detail and a retired law professor who believed in Elijah's vision. Together, they meticulously built their case against Judge Albright, focusing not just on the outcome of Sarah's case, but on the pattern of her behavior and the potential motivations behind her alleged corruption. Their investigation uncovered a series of subtle connections between Judge Albright and influential figures in the city's elite circles, the same circles Emily Carter belonged to. There were whispers of past favors exchanged, of shared memberships in exclusive clubs, and even indirect financial ties. While none of this was concrete proof of bribery, it painted a disturbing picture of potential undue influence. The lawsuit itself was a legal minefield. Judges enjoyed significant immunity from lawsuits related to their official duties. Elijah's strategy hinged on proving that Judge Albright's actions in Sarah Johnson's case went beyond mere errors in judgment and constituted a deliberate and malicious abuse of power, motivated by corruption and racial bias. The news of a lawsuit filed by the young lawyer against the veteran judge spread like wildfire. The media descended on the courthouse, eager to cover the unprecedented legal battle. Elijah Vance became an overnight sensation, hailed by some as a courageous champion of justice, and derided by others as a naive upstart biting off more than he could chew. The legal proceedings were tense and dramatic. Elijah, despite his youth, displayed remarkable composure and legal acumen, cross-examining witnesses and presenting evidence with the skill of a seasoned veteran. He argued passionately that Judge Albright had violated her oath to administer justice fairly and impartially, and that her actions had caused significant harm to Sarah Johnson and eroded public trust in the legal system. Judge Albright, initially dismissive of the lawsuit, grew increasingly agitated as Elijah's team presented their case. Her carefully constructed image of unflappable authority began to crack under the weight of the evidence and the intense scrutiny of the media. Witnesses came forward, some hesitantly at first, corroborating instances of Judge Albright's biased behavior in other cases. The trial became a microcosm of the larger societal issues of racial inequality and judicial accountability. It sparked heated debates about the role of judges, the prevalence of implicit bias in the legal system, and the courage it takes to challenge established power structures. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence Elijah presented was a statistical analysis of Judge Albright's rulings in similar cases over the past decade. The data revealed a statistically significant pattern of favoring white defendants over minority plaintiffs, particularly in cases involving allegations of discrimination. While not definitive proof of corruption, it painted a damning picture of systemic bias. As the trial progressed, the pressure on Judge Albright mounted. The media's scrutiny intensified, and calls for an internal investigation grew louder. Even within the legal community, long-held doubts about her impartiality began to surface. The climax of the trial came during Elijah's closing arguments. He stood before the jury, his voice filled with conviction. "This case," he declared, "is not just about Sarah Johnson or Judge Eleanor Albright. It is about the very soul of our justice system. Can we truly claim to be a nation that upholds equality and justice for all when those entrusted to administer the law do so with prejudice and corruption in their hearts?" Today, we have the opportunity to send a clear message that no one, not even a judge in her robes, is above the law. That justice must be blind, not to the color of one's skin, but to all forms of bias and corruption. The jury deliberated for days, the weight of their decision heavy on their shoulders. Finally, the verdict came. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The foreperson, her voice trembling slightly, read the verdict. "We, The jury fined in favor of the plaintiff, Elijah Vance, against the defendant, Judge Eleanor Albright. A stunned silence descended upon the courtroom, followed by a wave of murmurs and gasps. It was an unprecedented verdict, a monumental victory for the young lawyer, and a devastating blow to the established order. The consequences of the verdict were immediate and far-reaching. Judge Albright was swiftly removed from the bench and faced further investigation by the state's Judicial Ethics Committee. Sarah Johnson's case was reopened and assigned to a different judge, who, under the intense public scrutiny, ensured a fair and just outcome. Emily Carter was eventually found liable for her racist actions and ordered to pay substantial damages to Sarah. Elijah Vance, the 19-year-old genius, became a symbol of hope and a testament to the power of courage and conviction. He proved that age was no barrier to fighting for what was right, and that even the most formidable institutions could be held accountable. He continued his work at the pro bono firm, his reputation now preceding him, attracting a flood of new cases from those who had nowhere else to turn. What you've just witnessed is not just a story. It's a reflection of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality in our world. The courage of Elijah Vance, a young man who dared to challenge a system seemingly rigged against the marginalized, should inspire us all. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this incredible story? Do you believe that someone so young could truly take on such a powerful figure? Have you ever witnessed or experienced injustice that made you want to stand up and fight? Share your opinions in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about the importance of judicial integrity and the fight against racism in our legal system. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Help us spread this message of courage and the pursuit of justice far and wide. And most importantly, if you want to see more inspiring stories of real-life heroes and groundbreaking legal battles, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you content that challenges the status quo and sheds light on the issues that truly matter. Click the subscribe button now and join our community of truth seekers and justice advocates. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for watching.